Do you struggle with limiting beliefs? Are you constantly telling yourself things like, I'm not a morning person. I just don't have the genetics to lose weight, or I don't have the genetics to have abs, or I don't have this, right? And you're telling yourself this story. If that's you, you've come to the right place. I'm going to take you through my story breaker exercise that you can use for journaling, that you can use for meditation, that you can use to completely shift your perspective on how you see yourself, right? And we're gonna take this little dice as a visual as to how you can do this. If this is your first time to my channel, welcome. My name is Paul, and it is my mission to create high quality content so that you can learn everything there is about training, nutrition, recovery, and mindfulness, so that ultimately you can live a long, happy, and healthy life. If that sounds good, hit the like button below, be sure and subscribe, and then tap that little bell so that you can get notifications every time I drop a video. So with that said, let's get into it. So the story breaker exercise. This is actually something that I went through with a client, Sarah. She was really uneasy, let's call it uneasy, about tracking her nutrition, right? Previously, she'd had a poor relationship with food. We went through this exercise and it gave her a completely different perspective on how she looked at tracking her food, which ultimately gave her a different perspective on implementing it, and has allowed her to lose almost 15 pounds, drop almost 18 inches, and ultimately change her relationship with her food. And it started all with this exercise of shifting perspectives. So when you're meditating, right, a lot of people use this thought of like, oh, you gotta clear your mind, and that's the key. And I like to take the perspective of meditation as being a ponderance or a rumination, and it's something that you've got your mind fixated on one thing. And in that, you're allowed to take that monkey mind that's maybe jumping around, giving you a ton of anxiety, and just say, hey monkey, sit on this thought right now. And with that thought, now you want to take yourself out of it, almost as if you're looking at it from the third person. And that's where I have this little dice right here. And this is where this concept came from. Was I used to always teach this as a cube. And you would look at this cube and you'd spin it and look at all the different angles and perspectives of how you could understand this thought. And this is really diving into the reflection-based exercises that I'll teach in my 3 pillars of mindfulness. If you haven't had a chance to watch that video after this one, check out the 3 pillars of mindfulness to understand how you can reflect, spend time in the present, or visualize in your meditation or journaling exercises. Now, what does this cube or this dice have to do with the story breaker exercise? Well, like I said at the very beginning of this video, we all have stories that we tell ourselves. I'm gonna use one example right here. So look at a dice, there's number 1. And on that is maybe the story that you've told yourself for years. So I'm gonna go with this example right here. Number 1, I don't have the genetics for fill in the blank, weight loss. I don't have the genetics for abs. I don't have the genetics for a big butt. I don't have the genetics for sleeping well, whatever it is. And that's a story you've had on repeat, and that's a story you buy. And although it's not true, 100% certainty, as if gravity itself was the law, just like I don't have genetics for X, Y, and Z, right? Gravity, very true. Taxes, very true. You'll die at some point, very true. I don't have the genetics for X, Y, and Z, not necessarily true. So what I like to say is, okay, cool. So this is how I see this cube. Well, what if I flipped it? What if I said the exact opposite? All right, so that's where we look. If you look at a 1, boom, and you got a 6, bang. So that's where we say the exact opposite. Instead of I don't have the genetics for weight loss, we'll just say I have the genetics for weight loss. We just remove the don't. And it's not just I have the genetics for weight loss. It's I have the genetics for weight loss. It's just waiting for me to get up off the couch and go and see how badass I actually am. And my genetics are just waiting to show me, right? And that's the story that you're telling yourself. That's what you're buying, because now you're like, oh man, maybe I can. It sounds pretty good. I got the genetics for it. All right, so then we go here, boom, back down to 2. So you rotate it maybe, boom, just a little bit, spin it, we're looking at a 2. I can change my genetics, right? So now we're looking at it from a different perspective. I don't have the genetics. Maybe your genetic profile right now is not optimal for the goal that you have. But through epigenetics, you can change them, right? And you can change how those genes express. Well, That's a new thought that you can put on replay, almost like a CD going on in your head over and over and over. So if I can change my genetics, and genetics are passed down, well, let's look at 5. My kids will get the best genes that I can possibly give them. I'm not talking about, 7 for mankind or frame or whatever jeans you're wearing, Levi's. My kids will have the best genes. And that's one that I always see with clients where, if they're believing how this is true for them right now, maybe you don't have the best situation, but you can create a better situation for other people. So that's a whole nother story that you can take, and you can play with these and massage these. Don't think that this is just 6. But now let's come down to 3. I can be an example. So this is kind of tied to the kids, but what if you don't have the genetics, or maybe you have a disease? Maybe you have type 2 diabetes, right? Maybe you have PCOS, and maybe you don't have the situation that you would want to have, but you can be an example for people who are just as lost as you are, or as lost as you were. And you can be an example for them and say, hey, I am dealing with exactly what you're dealing with. You can be the example, and that's a completely different story. And we are breaking this story of I don't have the genetics for, boom. Last one, do it from my mind, right? Everyone's always about, from a fitness standpoint, what can I physically do? What about how you feel when you keep your promises to yourself? What about how you feel when you go and do hard things and you just let the process take care of yourself? What about how you feel every single time you finish that workout and you say, man, I didn't think that I could do this, but I did it, and now I've got a completely different story in my head. And it all comes from taking this thought, taking this perspective, and I like to use this visual when I'm sitting there meditating. I'm just like, man, what is this thought that I can really reflect on? And as I'm closing my eyes, I'm thinking about this cube, and I'm thinking about this thing that I'm reflecting on. I'm just spinning it every different angle. How can I look at this from a different perspective so that it gives me a different story, so that I can see things that maybe I haven't seen before? And that's what the story breaker exercise is. So you can do this through meditation. You can sit down, piece of paper, write down all of the different things that you tell to yourself, and then come up with at least six different stories for that one story that you have. Think about shifting with this cube, how you're looking at it, shifting that perspective. That's all for now. If you like what you saw, be sure and hit the like button. If you like the content of the channel, be sure and subscribe and ding that notification bell to get notified next time I drop a video. Be sure and check out these videos here for other videos and trainings and guides that I've done on journal exercises, meditation, and mindfulness as a whole. And if you want more free content, be sure and join my Mindful Muscle Facebook group. I've got a ton more of free trainings and specific guides and PDFs that you can utilize today and get some questions asked. Be surrounded by a community of people that value the same things around training, nutrition, recovery, and mindfulness. And if you're like, man, I like this stuff, how do I work with you? Click the link below as well. You can apply for a coaching call and be able to talk to people on our team and go through basically an advisory call, see if the program's a good fit for you to work with our E4 Fit team. Other than that, I'll catch you later in the next video.